Hi everyone, my name is A-Dogs and thank you all for coming to my channel. So I just wanted to do a quick video of some decks you should be testing against for the standard format for Springfest. There are still a couple of Springfests left, so I thought I'd just give you an idea of what you could be expecting. With that, we'll just jump into the video. So of course, first of all, it is Ava. Ava is definitely a deck you're probably going to see a lot in Springfest. So it just essentially allows you to deck thin because of the first skill. Top four, looking at a certain amount of cards depending on how many orders you have in your order zone. You gotta add one to hand and stack the rest on the bottom. Then it also decks things by searching for an obfuscate during the battle phase. You have your grade 1 order, which essentially allows you to give your obfuscates resist. And then if you have 4 orders in the order zone, you can put into the soul, countercharge one, and add a obfuscate from your drop to your hand. Then you also do have the grade 3 order. Grade 3 order, essentially when it's placing in the top 5, you can call a unit card from among them to the Riga circle, and then shuffle the rest. If you do, for example, find either a grade 2 or grade 3 obfuscate, you can activate their skills and it's called by an effect. And then it also has another neat little ability where essentially when you can rest the order in 2 other orders, Soul Blast 1, to give a glitter unit 5k. So you can either give Vanguard for 5k or an obfuscate 5k and just make some magic numbers. Again, since the obfuscates also gain extra shield value as well, the deck ends up being quite tanky. So this is a deck that can stabilize really well when it hits grade 3. So overall, Ava's a very strong deck. It is a deck you should also be testing against. Next we have Youth Perk. So Youth Perk's definitely been falling for a little bit, but I think there's still a lot of popularity around behind him that I think you probably will still see him. So essentially, Youth Perk, most of the time you're just trying to spam Tempest just to generate extra cards, kind of like build up a massive hand. Just putting pressure every turn to where you can get to your Gust, and use your Gust as a finisher. So you have the cards like grade 1 that essentially gives your Vanguard, your Rebel Dress Vanguard extra drive check. You also do have Wayward Angels, where they're discarded by either your Youth Perk, Skyfall Arms, or your Gust. You can call it back for free for Soul Blast 1, it gets called in the back row, but essentially it becomes like a break-even discard. It's also very strong. Again, Youth Perk himself being able to potentially find a Rebel form. If not, you can just pretty much call the card. That's great to or less. Then you also have Snizel, which allows you to look at top 5, find a Rebel form, and add to hand, shuffle. And then you also do have cards like the Dull Brag, which actually is a strong standalone attacker, as long as you have a Rebel form to Soul Blast. It also does have another ability as well. When your Rebel form is placed, it can give you Vanguard +5. So overall, the deck I think is still fairly strong. Again, makes big numbers. It can draw quite a few cards because of Tempest. Has a solid finisher because of Gust, and just overall has a pretty good deck fitting as well. So definitely a deck I think you should be testing against as well. Next we have Welstra. So Welsh is definitely very strong. It got some very good support in set 9. So it got an order. The product, what it does essentially is when it's placed, you can draw one and then soul charge one. Also has another ability where when it's activated during the main phase in the top 5 and call one, but then it's activated during the battle phase, you can draw one, so that's already solid itself. You also do have Freyhate. Freyhate, essentially when it's placed, you can search for a product or search for a copy of your Vanguard at the hand. So essentially you can search for your grade 2 products, you can search for your grade 3 products. The grade 3 product being the Giant Castle, I can't remember what it's called. But essentially what that card does is when it's activated, you can neg the opponent's Vanguard by 5 and then retire one. So if you activate quite a few triggers of that product, you can actually retire quite a few cards and neg the opponent's Vanguard by a lot. Also, the order itself, you can pay a counterblast to bounce a normal unit back to hand and then call it to an open Riga circle. So essentially what you can do is, if you're using your frame hates to thin your deck, especially Wellsters or your products, you can essentially use the gravity order to bounce the rate back so you can do the next turn, so you can deck thin your deck even more and also get multi-attacks. But they're definitely, the deck's definitely very strong. The fact that it can draw quite a lot if you need to with the grade 2 order, neg a lot, and retire a lot because of the grade 3 order, and also deck thing. If you use that grade 2 order in the main phase, it's very solid all around. The deck's very flexible and it's very strong. It just takes a very good pilot to pilot the deck, and if you are versing Guild Power or Vostra, it can be very devastating. So it's definitely a deck you need to test against. Next we have Minerva. So Minerva itself, definitely very strong, especially with the first skill. If you can essentially get away from the soul, which Angelica can, although Angelica can't cheat herself from the soul fear, you can get the front row 5k power, so it essentially helps make all your units hit magic numbers. You do have, I think, grade 2 and grade 1 that can enable multi-attacks. Essentially what they do is when the soul blasts them out, as long as you pay the cost for them, you can call them out. So you can actually generate quite a few multi-attacks on Minerva. Also, the fact that you can also scry the top card of your deck if you put the top and bottoms is very, put the top on the souls, definitely strong too. Because especially if you do see a trigger, since your Vanguard does restand, you can essentially get the trigger power to your Vanguard, so you can restand and swing again with that potential trigger power. So it's definitely very strong overall. You have, you can do quite a few attacks and also have a very scary Vanguard. So overall, Minerva is definitely a really solid deck, and is a deck that I think you should be testing against. Next is Letitia. So Letitia is just very strong. As long as you hit your 4 orders, the deck's absolutely insane. You have some crazy powered regards. So essentially with Nostria essentially, her skill is like when she's placing the top 3, put one of them into the soul and put the rest in the bottom, so you're reverse stacking your deck. And then also when you have 4 orders in soul, it gets plus 15. So it's a 25k attacker by itself. If you have Uikas on board and you have like Nostrias and probably Uikas, you're thinking for essentially 33 or 38 depending on how big your Vanguard is. Then again with Letitia herself, she is a restander, so and she also gains 5k when you play orders, a normal order. So essentially if you play a normal order and then you fulfill all of Letitia's skills, essentially swings from 23 that restands. And again, any triggers you see, you can potentially just give it to your Vanguard, since most of the time your reguards are hitting giant numbers. So it's definitely a very scary deck. You can pop off really hard when it gets to grade 3, and especially with opponents in grade 2, they can be up struggle street. This deck can wreck face really hard. The orders are absolutely insane as well. So you have the normal order, which essentially you put it into the soul charge 1, call the card out, gets 5k. So depending on when you use it, essentially it can make a measured number, will always get the Vanguard, so it's kind of like an extra poke. And then the defensive order is really strong as well. The defensive order is pretty much like when it's played, you can give a unit plus 15k to it in a battle. But then, if you have 4 or more cursed orders on the soul, you have to draw a card. So essentially, you have a 15k shield defensive order that can potentially draw a card. So that, which means that that order acts as like 2 cards in your hand. This is very, very strong. Yeah, so overall this is just very, very strong overall. You can generate quite a few cards in hand, has solid multi-attacks, really powerful regards, and a very scary Vanguard to boot as well. It's definitely a deck you should be testing against. Next we have Chronojet. So Chronojet, just really strong. It gets batshit insane depending how long the game goes, because the crest power of the deck gets stronger and stronger. Usually when you have like 4 or 5 units face up, it gets really, really, really hairy, really, really fast. It can draw quite a few cards as well, using cards like Gigi. And then also you can deck fin fairly well as well, depending on what kind of cards you run. So for example, like Lings, Also using the grade 2, I think it's upstream, I can't remember its name, but essentially allows you to put himself back to call the card out. And then you also do have Fate Rider. Fate Rider essentially allows you to enable multi-attacks, and Fate Rider can give a unit 5k for each face card in the G zone. So making some massive numbers, getting strong multi-attacks, doing some deck thinning, and drawing a lot of cards overall. The deck's definitely insane, so it's definitely a deck you should be testing against. Lastly, it's Overlord. So best way to explain Overlord, if you go second, you have an Idle Hatchet, you put a Dragonic Overlord on the Soul, your end swings, we're not losing any drive checks. If you can discard a Halb, essentially you're plussing because Halb counts as 2 discards, and the Halb can also call itself out to Reguard Circle 2. So you just essentially just have a very powerful Vanguard because you're getting 4 drive checks every turn, and then you have some very solid, you have some decent Reguards as well. You've got Nahalem, which 15k attacker by itself, that also uses your Vanguard 5k too. And again, yeah, just that constant multis, you're always getting like 4 attacks every turn. Overlord's always swinging with 4 drive checks, so it's, you know, swinging and then standing and then swinging again, 2 drive checks each. Very, very strong deck, especially if you can hit triggers. If you can hit triggers in this deck's an absolute monster. So that's pretty much the decks I wanted to really go over for Springfest. I feel like these are decks you probably will see, and I think they're decks that you definitely should be testing against. Just so if you do run up against these matchups, you've had some testing beforehand to hopefully win. So that is it for me. I hope you guys enjoy. If you did, make sure to leave a like, and while you're down there, why not subscribe and hit the notification bell so that when I upload another video, you will be notified. Airdogs out. See ya.